We will be talking about the Budget 2024 proposal. Of course, we have several committees in the National Assembly taking a look at the proposal of Mr. President, of course, the 2024 budget appropriation bill of over 27 trillion naira. As we gradually come towards the end of the year, as we begin in 2024, we will definitely see perhaps the eventual signing of the budget 2024 as well as the implementation of it. But let's take a quick look at the issues surrounding this 2024 budget, and my guest is joining me today, Oluseun Onigbinde, who is the founder of Budget. Hello, Seun, and welcome to the program. Hello, Seun, can you hear me? Hello, Seun, can you hear me? Seun, please, can you enable your picture? Okay, perhaps we should take a break to enable us take Seun Onigbinde, who is the founder Budget 2024. Who is the founder Budget? We're talking Budget 2024. Okay, I'm being told he's there. Hello, Seun.
Hello, Nancy. Apologies. I think I had some technical issues
Okay,
from my end. I think I'm fine now.
okay.
Yes.
Can I see you now? Director, good. Seun, so good to see you. Seun, let's see if we can continue this conversation on the budget. I know I spoke with you just a few days after the president presented the appropriation bill for 2024. We've seen the details since that time, at least a breakdown. The Minister of Finance has, and the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning have spoken severally about Budget 2024. I don't know if you have read it back to back. I have, but I've not finished because it's a long stuff. But I think with what we know, we should be able, or what we've seen so far, we should be able to discuss it. So speak to me about what your findings are. And let me start by asking, what are the differences and the similarities of the Budget 2024 appropriation, that's a appropriation bill for budget for 2024? What are the similarities and the differences from 2024 and the past budgets?
Okay. Thank you very much, Nancy. I would say that the president has explained or shown his position or his approach with this budget. It's good, but there are still challenges. The same challenges remain. I mean, prior to the presentation of this budget, we had a conversation. Budget made a presentation to the president and said there are some few things you need to avoid if you want to make your budget a very impactful one. And these were the things that either previous governments, when under the PDP or his predecessor, Muhammadu Buhari, was things they were doing and things that needs to change. And one of the first things we talked about is that the budget must be connected to a development plan, which means that don't just allow civil servants and budget analysts or budget officers in the MDAs to just write whatever they like in the budget. Let it be that you have a plan, you have an agenda, you have a clear definition goal of what exactly you want to do, and let the budget stem from that. Well, what we've seen is also the same issue. Same issues one, because when you see a lot of what we call the satirization of the budget, too many projects in the budget. You have some agencies like Ministry of Works running over 300 projects. You have Ministry of Water Resources, a whole lot of projects, and in bits and in pieces, 20 million, 10 million, 5 million, 50 million. Sometimes you wonder that is this a federal government budget? Because this could pass almost like a local government budget. We've always been clear that the federal government should focus on the big pipe projects that have some significant impact within a region, within in a state, or that also maybe interstate projects. But what we've seen is the federal government still appropriating for construction of boreholes, solar panels in local villages, and things that take on ordinarily should be the state or local government project. So that also shows that we still don't base our budget. We don't put our budget on the basis of planning. And what you also see is over. I mean, it's in the news already where the one of the senators, Senator Adam Shomole, was questioning the Minister of Trade and Investment on the appropriation of budgeting of around maybe 1 billion naira for a visit to Geneva or something like that. So you still see spots of things like that, or where budget items were just inflated in any way. I mean, and it creates a room for corruption, because if I put 1 billion naira and that we signed off, which means I've given myself a ceiling of 1 billion naira, and I can now work myself through the maze of procurement and etc. to get that to happen. We have a challenge in which budget is not premised, to me, in my own view, it's not premised enough on service. And you have so many items that are also begging. So we are also asking that question, that what exactly is the impact or the necessity of this item at this time? I mean, rebuilding or renovating the vice president office. I don't think, even in the first year of an administration, I mean, first full year specifically, I don't think that's what should be priority to a government, or even spending so billions on renovation of the dam barracks, or some digitization of the Lagos office. Other things are not supposed to be on priority. The president lives in Abuja, he doesn't live in Lagos. So in a way, the budget itself shows that there's a gap between understanding what matters more to Nigerians than what matters more to the bureaucracy, or maybe to the political leadership. Nigerians need help in different ways. And you also see, also means that we have too many agencies. I mean, this is the first time, and I made this on social media, that sat down the last 7 years to fully look at the budget, 2,290 pages, and make sure I combed every single page of it. And I was shocked at the additional number of MDAs that we have had in recent years. Some MDAs, even as someone who is a keen observer of public finance, I never heard of those MDAs. And so it also speaks to the National Assembly. Every time we're creating new agency, we're passing establishment bills, then definitely you have an obligation to fund them. And some of them, for example, you have a National Building Road and Research Institute,
Institute, yes.
which is a good one to have. But it's a research institute. It should focus on research, quality of roads. How do you ensure that what's soil texture? It should be like a material science laboratory of the government. How does this agency have 50 billion naira constructing roads all over the place? What should be the primary responsibility for the Ministry of Works? In some sort of, or you have, there was an agency that was even created, or agriculture created under the presidency, and I'm like, what exactly do you want to do with this agency? If you create an agency to be like a policy outfit under the presidency, that's fine. But every implementation should be narrowed down to the line ministry directly, or you have border communities development agency, and I feel like, okay, maybe this is good, so you pay extra attention to border communities, but you have border communities also now building roads, building schools, or applying solar systems, when all of those things should have been either done by the state government or done by the line ministries. And that's why you see a whole lot of opposite projects. There was one I was stumbling on, maybe National Roots Crop Research Institute, and they were also building solar panel in very one remote village. And sometimes you will see where you see like 1 billion allocation to a project, maybe in Remo, or 1 billion allocation to a project, maybe in Abia State, and you're wondering, what is the rationale for just singling out this place? It's not as if there's an agency that exists here already before. So it's not giving us, a thorough overview of that budget does not show that a lot of thought processes and a lot of learning has gone into what happened in the previous government, to say they spent a lot of money in the last government, borrowed so much money, end of view. By the end of the day, Nigerians will still look at like the economy did not change significantly. It's not as if we made moves that are massive. And it's just because there was a gale of haphazard spending that were not targeted at proper things.
Okay, so let me come in now. You've raised a lot of issues, and let me take it from the part of the NIBRI, for example. There's an agency, the Nigerian Building Research, Road Research Institute, I think NIBRI, which you mentioned. In fact, when I also saw that, what was coming to my mind, that I've known of this agency, I think I've spoken to the head of the agencies like twice on this program. And I'm wondering, and in fact, I've also asked them too, when I had opportunities to speak with them at the time, that you have a Minister of Works now who is former Governor Umahi. Is there an engagement between, for example, that Road Research Institute with the Ministry of Works, for example, of course, that is saddled with building roads and all of that? Because from what I know, even from that agency, a lot of research has gone on in terms of the kind of roads that we need in Nigeria. They've done extensive research. But you will see that an agency of government is working this way. Another ministry is working this way. So really there is no synergy. So how do we foster that? Because there was also a time, was it Seed Council? Which year was that? Was it 2022 that we saw one agricultural body that was building road?
Yeah.
In the budget too. I think it's this Seed Council also. You know, when I saw that, I was like, come on. You know, I think that agency is here in Abuja. So how do we foster that coordination amongst government agencies? So that's one. Number two is, what did you see from this budget? Do you how can you categorize it? Because there was a time, was it in 2021 or was it 28? Was it 2021 that it was said that we should go back to zero budgeting? Were you able to get the difference? Are we now back to envelope kind of system? That's the second question. The third question is around what you mentioned, that perhaps there's no really difference. But what would you say concerning the finance minister's responses about the budget deficit has decreased in this 2024's budget from about 6% now to about 3.8%? Isn't that something that at least is worth talking about?
I like the first question. Is something that the political leadership has to answer. You know, because you have to ask yourself, what is exactly my legacy here? You know, civil servants will do what they have to do. Bureaucrats will do what they have to do. So you have to ask. And I think it's something that this current government should pay extra attention to, because something that I would give kudos to this administration is about the fact that they've paid more attention to the macroeconomic fundamentals compared to the last government. So you have a scenario where the previous government felt like they could use deficit financing to turbocharge Nigeria's development, and in that situation, they were living more bigger problems in a way, because you now had a loose fiscal policy, a loose even though you had some conservative and monetary policy, but you were having a loose fiscal policy that was putting a whole lot of money in the hands of people, and that was even distorting the entire economy or even the exchange market. So, in a way, you now have another government that's trying to say we'll be more conservative. We would restrict things a lot. So that's been helpful. And I'm starting with your third question. That's been helpful because and that should now feed into the philosophy of the budget, which is what I mentioned in the previous times, that if a government says that we want to, because we've seen that we can no longer, monetary stability is very critical, exchange rate stability is critical, and fiscal spaces like the budget. When I mean fiscal, I mean the budget, taxes, all have a role to play in all of that. And we're going to pay extra attention to that, not have a loose policy. It starts by you looking into those line items and have some high level of budget and fiscal discipline. If you don't have any fiscal discipline, which what we're seeing in the budget line items, then you get the same result at the end of the day. So even though you get past the budget, getting those items funded is still in the prerogative of the president and the Minister of Finance specifically, and the Accountant General, who reports to the Minister of Finance. So in a way, they could still have some level of control about what gets funded, what gets prioritized, and at what cost those things get done. So for me, I feel that deficit management is something worth thinking well. Let's say it's a good process. I also believe that the devaluation of the currency has given a lot of money to the federal government. You could see state governments now easily presenting 500 billion naira budget, 800 billion naira budget. Also because they see from the projection that we are now able to easily share 1 trillion, we can even share 1.5 trillion.
No, but Shewun, let me just come in here and also say that it's also a bit ironic that the fuel subsidy has been removed, yet we are not seeing so much revenue flowing into the federation account. And this was also raised just a few days ago, precisely on Wednesday when I moderated the Nigeria development updates by the World Bank. In fact, specifically, I asked Mr. Waledu, the Minister of Finance, that question. Even though that you're seeing the states now, it seems that their own shares of that their FAC allocations have increased, but overall, we're still not making as much money as we should make, because they've actually told us that fuel subsidy is off, but it's in fact not totally off. You know, so
Yeah.
yes, so how do you really gauge that situation? And I asked Mr. Wale Edu on Wednesday, and you know, he gave his own explanations. And in fact, what he said, I remember what he told me vividly. And the NNPC CFO was in the room, and he said specifically that NNPC will further be scrutinized in terms of revenues that they are paid to the government. So go ahead.
I mean, when you say first subsidy has been removed, we have to debate it in some sort of way. I don't think, I think somewhere around July, August, that subsidy crept back in.
Yeah.
Maybe not being publicized or not being admitted as it should be. I mean, there were evidence that when the fact report was presented, NSTPC still withheld some funds for settling of first subsidy. Then if you do the math, you take the exchange rate, you take the current price of crude, I mean, maybe take it like a month or 2 months ago, and you do the mathematics, back of the envelope mathematics, you still see that fuel pricing should be around within the 750 to 800 naira corridor. That's just the honest truth. You know, that's why that double axe, or that double prong approach of increasing, of remove fuel subsidy, and also liberalizing to some extent the exchange rate market, means that even though if oil prices are slowing down globally, you have to get some level of currency exchange stability, to able to get the loop of fuel pricing at the end of the day, because crude is priced in dollars, and definitely the exchange rates are, people are going to source dollars to import crude. Maybe when the refinery of Alhaji Dangote comes on board and other refineries, maybe we can have a different conversation about that. But the question is that Nigeria will still sell crude in dollars specifically for exchange liquidity. So I don't, and so I don't think that the subsidy has disappeared. I think it's just managed, and the narrative is being managed in some sort of way. Um, I don't like fuel subsidy to some extent, even though I understand that it's more like a social benefit that Nigerians have enjoyed over the years. But there's a whole lot of distortion that the subsidy causes. So, and when you look at it specifically, NNPC over the years has used the fuel subsidy as some form of cover, to, I would plunder is the right word to use, to plunder the country, and that's my problem with the subsidy. It's not as if, even on the current revenues that you expect NNPC to remit, they don't remit that. Now, we now go beyond that frame and now say, okay, we use LNG payments for subsidy, or we need to even borrow to pay for subsidy, or even we need to, we're taking a loan for subsidy. And those are the things that, for me, it's the bigger distortion. We've taken all our savings, we've used excess crude account for subsidy, we've borrowed for subsidy, LNG receipts that should have been the seed capital to further develop further trains. NNPC over the years claimed that they've used that for subsidy. So it's something that has to go, because it looks like NNPC has used the subsidy situation to continuously, my own view, continuously to benefit itself. And that's why I agree with what Mr. Wale Edo says. NNPC needs to get that scrutiny, heavy scrutiny. And the scrutiny for the NNPC is not far-fetched. Number one, the size of its operation is too huge. The operational cost that we knew before, I mean, when the numbers were still being published, the operational cost of NNPC is too large. And second, it's carried a whole lot of dead weights too. Dead weights like the refineries. It's not, if we could have allowed a separate entities to just carry that burden, some borrow away. And if you want to really put NNPC public, which is going to be a huge FX liquidity for the federal government, if you want to take NNPC public, you cannot do that without not making all of these cost adjustments at the end of the day, which is something the federal government also should consider in the long term.
So as we gradually wind up the year, really, Nigerians, especially for people that do businesses, in fact, every Nigerian should be involved in the budget, because the budget of the federal government, trickles down to every Nigerian. Then the states, for example, I'll come back to the states in a bit. With the renewed hope budget for 2024, according to Mr. President, what sectors do you really think will benefit from 2024's budget? So for people that are listening right now and, that want to take positions, which sectors do you think that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has really concentrated on in his budget proposal?
Thanks so much. I think there's a whole lot of concentration on the Ministry of Works. The capital project was around 580 billion naira. So definitely, and by the time you had other agencies like the MBRR, MBRI, and other, you talking about capital projects of around 700 billion. So construction would be a huge, if it's well funded, would be a huge element in this budget. Something that citizens have to take note of specifically. There's also a huge interest in export trade zone. I saw the Nigeria Export Zone Authority, NEPSA, if I get the acronym right. They are trying to spend a whole lot in building industrial parks. One in Lekki, I've seen another on another south region of the country. So it's something what Nigerians should pay attention to. It seems that there is a deliberate attempt to collocate services and businesses in certain areas and provide infrastructure and the energy that they need to be actually to do business. So it looks like it's an approach that India has done well with, and maybe Nigeria also could explore that while we wait for Siemens and all the other energy companies to come to our, to fix to do what they have to do. There's also a big position on renewable energy. I see a whole lot of investment, and that has even come under the radar. So a lot of funding on solar energy. The government, even from the Ministry of Power's budget to the Rural Electrification Agency and to different agencies. I mean, which also speaks to the opposite nature of the budget. I mean, one single agency should be doing that. Even the Ministry of Environment, so many funds being allocated to solar projects. So if we are someone who's invested in solar energy, maybe it's something to also pierce into the budget and look into where you can position yourself for some kind of opportunity. There is a huge element of intervention, direct intervention, which means you have like almost 435 billion naira is committed to that. Continuing what the previous government was trying to do with the NSIP, and I think there's a new name for it called Renew Hope Fund or something like that. So I think it's a philosophy of the APC government to continue to do social disbursement and social security, if you put it that way. So the whole of funds, if it's going to be as impactful as it should be, that will be the question that we'll have to ask over the years, because I don't think we have administered it in a holistic way, but there's a lot of funding for that. The funding for security, I think security takes the biggest chunk of this budget. I'm impressed a little bit about health, a little bit, because I don't think it's gotten us to where we want to be. Some funding, almost around 37 billion for um, teaching hospitals, tertiary hospitals, which is good. I mean, but they need actually more funding than that. So, and education, I think there's a lot of work still needs to be done with education. We have not funding education as we should fund education, and now we are being forced to invest in security because we refuse to build human capital, and we are now dealing with the fallout in different ways. So, I don't think we did enough with health and education at the end of the day. But to be honest, renewable energy, construction, and defense are the major points of where government spending is highly directed.
If we take a look at states now, let's cascade it to the budget of states, because we're always so highly concentrated on the budget of the federal government, and you see the media agog with budget of the federal government. We really do not pay so much attention on states. Now let's take a look at the states. Of course, many of them have also presented their budgets to their own assemblies. Even the warring faction in River State has also warring parties. The political crisis we see in River State, the governor has also presented 800 billion naira for 2024 to, whether it's the 4-member or 5-member assembly right now in River State. But the issue now is that he has presented, and in fact they've even gone ahead to approve, that's 800 billion naira for Rivers. For Lagos State, Governor Sanwo-Olu presented 2 trillion naira for, yes, for Lagos State. Enugu has presented over 500 billion naira. We have Ekiti about 159 billion naira. For Abia, over 520 billion naira. What do you see for the states? Because I also see that some states have been able to say, giving more attention to capital expenditure. If you take a look at Lagos, for example, I guess this is the first time I'm seeing a budget in the range of 2 trillion, 2.2, I guess, for
2.2 trillion.
yes, 2.2 trillion for Lagos State. What does it say? Because there was even a state in Nigeria, Cross River State, in the last administration where we have a governor, Professor, what's his name again? You see?
Benayade.
Yes, Ben Ayade with the budget infinitum, quantum infinitum of over 1 trillion naira, and that was just shambles. When I saw that, I was like, where are you going to? And of course, we all know the story. So what do you really think of states that are now focusing a bit on capital expenditure and the kind of conversations we should be having with our state governors?
I think it's a good one, and also has to keep. They have to keep some form of balancing. And I say this specifically because more revenues are coming into the hands of states compared to previous times. Also, there are also challenges around inflation. Don't forget that if it costs a 1 billion naira to construct a road, maybe the last 2 years, it will not cost a 1 billion naira this year again. So definitely, inflation will also creep into their expenditure, especially to deliver those capital projects. So, but it's also a big thing that they are also putting more money on capital expenditure. I've always been very clear. Nigeria's engine of growth will likely be realized from the state level. Federal government looks to haphazard, looks to unwieldy at this point. So it's still the state level which have some level of concentration and some form of prolonged dynamic leadership that can give us the kind of results that we want. So I believe that if people are putting more money in the capital project, it's good. It's not bad to put money in the recurring projects because a lot of recurring components of the budget. Because a lot of people get this wrong to say spend on capital. School teachers are paid from the recurring component. Um, 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 Doctors are paid from the recurring components. Policemen, local security outfits, local government workers, those are part of the recurrent element. So it's not part to fund the bureaucracy. What you should struggle, what we should question is what is the operating cost of government? What is the overhead cost of government? Does it show some form of lean? Is it lean enough? Does it show some form of leanness? Because at the end of the day, it's not supposed to just be. I'm not a fan of the dichotomy of capital and recurrent. Yes, capital should take a charge, but you also need to understand that for every capital component, there's also a recurrent element of it. If you build a school, or if you build an hospital, you have to pay teachers or you have to pay doctors to man it or to administer it. And that's what comes to the civil service. Because if the prices of things have increased significantly due to inflation and current currency devaluations, I've not heard anything around salary adjustment or minimum wage increases in most of the states. I've heard other things like we're going to give them 30,000, 25,000 difference. I think that's not holistic enough, especially for those who are at the top of the cadre, who maybe have significant increase in responsibility. So there also should be a conversation to give workers their decent payment or their decent in the light of the current situation in the country. So I also want to see more capital, but also make sure that citizens or workers or civil servants are not being shortchanged in that process. And this is also the chance to do some form of restructuring or downsizing. Maybe it's time to really have that conversation and get people some of bumper bonus, to be able to quietly or happily exit the system. Because most of the time, these state governments are also running large operations that are necessary, especially at the secretariat level, because everybody comes in and hires his own people, hires someone from his own clan and puts them in there and just see that the size of government keeps expanding beyond necessary. So maybe this is also some time to apply some cost-cutting measures so that you have a much more linear service that can serve you in the long run. Maybe it's also time to just have those conversations with it. And even the federal government needs to have it. A lot of agencies that should have just been departments, in ministries, or a lot of agencies that should not even exist, or that duplication. I saw National Productivity Center in the budget and I was questioning like, what exactly does National Productivity Center do? What have they done that's driven productivity in the country over the last few years? And if you look into their budget, you're seeing a capital budget of maybe of 500 million. Exactly, are you going to do? Are you just existing, just for civil servants to receive pay and all of that?
That will be a question. That will be a question for the head of the center. Shehu, as we move towards the end of the program, I want to know your view on this because I've also heard it a few times. Yesterday, the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, celebrated his 61st birthday. The guest lecturer was um, Oluseun San, SAN, and he spoke yesterday. And Mr. President was there, and I listened keenly to his submissions. And one thing that he said at the event was that Nigeria has no business operating on a 27 trillion naira budget, for example. That there are areas where we can harness quick wins, and Nigeria should be presenting like a budget of over 100 trillion naira. What do you think about this? Because I've also heard it. Dr. Tokpe Fashua, who is now the special advisor to the president on economic matters, told me that several times on this show, even many years ago. Nancy, we don't need all this, even during President Jonathan. Thank God he's working with President Tinubu now. So, yes, and I've been telling him, let's see now, you know. So, so I've heard things like that. How do you think we can really unlock this in terms of, because if you take a look at even 2024 budget of 27 trillion naira, in dollar terms is still very low. The budget of the last few years are more than that in dollar terms. And other countries, even in Africa, are doing better. South Africa, Egypt are doing better than us in terms of our budget size. So what do you think? And will that be, because even, let me also link it to the question around President Bola Ahmed Tinubu delivering his promise, $1 trillion economy.
That's a long haul to have $1 trillion economy. It's a nice have, but we have to be honest with ourselves. Um, the reality is that the revenue of government, the spending of government is technically very, very small. Considering I mean, we are the biggest, most populous country in Africa, and if you put the budget on per capita basis, you will see that it is very, very small. Even if you aggregate the state budget and you put the local government there, you're not going to get a budget or actual spending. Let me not even take out the budget. You're not going to get an actual spending of more than 40 billion naira, 40 trillion naira annually. I mean, states and on a state federal level. Because even by the time you put FAC allocation there, FAC is around 20 to 22 trillion, and you now had IGR of states and other earnings in there. The challenge is that we're spending too small and we earn too small, but we're also spending inefficiently. So that's another bigger problem. So, but it also talks about, I always make this joke with that Nigeria is like an average graduate who came back to pick up a job in Oshodi, as a bus conductor. And every time they ask him to pay his rent, he tells everybody, I'm a Harvard graduate, but you're a clerk in Oshodi. It doesn't add up. So we have a big economy, but when you look at the fundamentals of revenue and spending, or how much we can take from it, how much revenue we're generating from it, it's not there. And why? Because a big economy that is concentrated in very few areas, and also a big economy with a lot of people who are also poor and do not contribute economically into the country, in the country. So you will not call them assets, in some sort of way, in terms of even when you define things like social contract theory. So for me, that's where the problem. Too many poor people, concentration of economies within just around 10 out of 36 states. And so you're having a challenge of how much can you even take from this system? Because if people don't have much, you can't take everything.
Everything.
So we have to go back to the basics of the fact that we need to generate growth, and we also need to generate to take a lot of revenue that's sensible, and also be more efficient with it. I agree, our budget should be in the 50 trillion naira minimum, at least at the federal level. But I mean, which revenue? I mean, last 2 years, our federal government revenue was around 6 trillion naira. In 2020, 2022, was around. This year it might be on course to reach 10 trillion naira. Because I think as of September we are on 8 trillion naira already, and that even revenue, there are a lot of things in that revenue that I see that I don't agree that they are revenue items. But at the end of the day, you see that we don't have a huge revenue profile like that. It comes back to, we need to be a productive economy, we need to be efficient in collection, we need to be efficient in spending.
Anyway, Sean, I think we'll leave it at that for today, because I know that I can continue to have this conversation with you on the budget. We can really unravel the different layers of the budget and take it from any angle. We feel run out. We feel run out. We can run it, but we are limited by time. So thank you very much, Sean, and thank you for being a part of our show this 2023, and I wish you well. Happy holidays. in case we don't speak
Thank you.
before 2024.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's a pleasure.
All